seriously imagine that such a plan could be adopted, but that she proposed it, as perverse and intriguing people often do, as a means of increasing the difficulty. Such minds often attempt to prevent doing what can be done by proposing and urging what they know is impossible. In the course of these negotiations, Queen Mary once sent Melville, her former page of honour in France, as a special ambassador to Queen Elizabeth, to ascertain more perfectly her views. Melville had followed Mary to Scotland, and had entered her service there as a confidential secretary, and as she had great confidence in his prudence and in his fidelity, she thought him the most suitable person to undertake this mission. Melville afterward lived to an advanced age, and in the latter part of his life he wrote a narrative of his various adventures, and recorded, in quaint and ancient language, many of his conversations and interviews with the two queens. His mission to England was of course a very important event in his life, and one of the most curious and entertaining passages in his memoirs is his narrative of his interviews with the English Queen. He was at the time about 34 years of age. Mary was about 22. Sir James Melville was received with many marks of attention and honour by Queen Elizabeth. His first interview with her was in a garden near the palace. She first asked him about a letter which Mary had recently written to her, and which, she said, had greatly displeased her. And she took out a reply from her pocket, written in very sharp and severe language, though she said she had not sent it because it was not severe enough, and she was going to write another. Melville asked to see the letter from Mary which had given Elizabeth so much offence, and on reading it he explained it and disavowed on Mary's part any intention to give offence, and thus finally succeeded in appeasing Elizabeth's displeasure, and at length induced her to tear up her angry reply. Elizabeth then wanted to know what Mary thought of her proposal of Dudley for her husband. Melville told her that she had not given the subject much reflection, but that she was going to appoint 2 commissioners, and she wished Elizabeth to appoint 2 others, and then that the 4 should meet on the borders of the 2 countries, and consider the whole subject of the marriage. Elizabeth said that she perceived that Mary did not think much of this proposed match. She said, however, that Dudley stood extremely high in her regard, that she was going to make him an earl, and that she should marry him herself, were it not that she was fully resolved to live and die a single woman. She said she wished very much to have Dudley become Mary's husband, both on account of her attachment to him, and also on account of his attachment to her, which she was sure would prevent his allowing her, that is Elizabeth, to have any trouble out of Mary's claim to her crown as long as she lived. Elizabeth also asked Melville to wait in Westminster until the day appointed for making Dudley an earl. This was done a short time afterward with great ceremony. Lord Darnley, then a very tall and slender youth of about 19, was present on the occasion. His father and mother had been banished from Scotland on account of some political offences 20 years before, and he had thus himself been brought up in England. As he was a near relative of the Queen, and a sort of heir presumptive to the crown, he had a high position at the court, and his office was, on this occasion, to bear the sword of honour before the Queen. Dudley kneeled before Elizabeth while she put upon him the badges of his new dignity. Afterward she asked Melville what he thought of him. Melville was polite enough to speak warmly in his favour. "And yet," said the Queen, "I suppose you prefer yonder long lad," pointing to Darnley. She knew something of Mary's half-formed design of making Darnley her husband. Melville, who did not wish her to suppose that Mary had any serious intention of choosing Darnley, said that no woman of spirit would choose such a person as he was, for he was handsome, beardless, and lady-faced. In fact, he looked more like a woman than a man. Melville was not very honest in this, for he had secret instructions at this very time to apply to Lady Lennox, Darnley's mother, to send her son into Scotland, in order that Mary might see him and be assisted to decide the question of becoming his wife by ascertaining how she was going to like him personally. Queen Elizabeth, in the meantime, pressed upon Melville the importance of Mary's deciding soon in favour of the marriage with Leicester. As to declaring in favour of Mary's right to inherit the crown after her, she said the question was in the hands of the great lawyers and commissioners to whom she had referred it, and that she heartily wished that they might come to a conclusion in favour of Mary's claim. She should urge the business forward as fast as she could, but the result would depend very much upon the disposition which Mary showed to comply with her wishes in respect to the marriage. She said she should never marry herself unless she was compelled to it, on account of Mary's giving her trouble by her claims upon the crown, and forcing her to desire that it should go to her direct descendants. If Mary would act wisely, and as she ought, and follow her counsel, she would, in due time, have all her desire. Some time more elapsed in negotiations and delays. There was a good deal of trouble in getting leave for Darnley to go to Scotland. From his position, and from the state of the laws and customs of the two realms, he could not go without Elizabeth's permission. Finally, Mary sent word to Elizabeth that she would marry Leicester, according to her wish, if she would have a claim to the English crown, after Elizabeth, acknowledged and established by the English government, so as to have that question definitely and finally settled. Elizabeth sent back for answer to this proposal that if Mary married Leicester, she would advance him to great honours and dignities, but that she could not do anything at present about the succession. She also, at the same time, gave permission to Darnley to go to Scotland. It is thought that Elizabeth never seriously intended that Mary should marry Leicester, and that she did not suppose Mary herself would consent to it on any terms. Accordingly, when she found Mary was acceding to the plan, she wanted to retreat from it herself, and hoped that Darnley's going to Scotland and appearing there as a new competitor in the field would tend to complicate and embarrass the question in Mary's mind, and help to prevent the Leicester negotiation from going any further. At any rate, Lord Darnley, then a very tall and handsome young man of 19, obtained suddenly permission to go to Scotland. Mary went to Weems Castle and made arrangements to have Darnley come and visit her there. Weems Castle is situated in a most romantic and beautiful spot on the seashore on the northern side of the Frith of Forth. Edinburgh is upon the southern side of the Frith, and is in full view from the windows of the castle, with Salisbury Craigs and Arthur's Seat on the left of the city. Weems Castle was, at this time, the residence of Murray, Mary's brother. Mary's visit to it was an event which attracted a great deal of attention. The people flocked into the neighbourhood, and provisions and accommodations of every kind rose enormously in price. Every one was eager to get a glimpse of the beautiful Queen. Besides, they knew that Lord Darnley was expected, and the rumour that he was seriously thought of as her future husband had been widely circulated, and had awakened, of course, a universal desire to see him. Mary was very much pleased with Darnley. She told Melville, after their first interview, that he was the handsomest and best proportioned young man she had ever seen. Darnley was, in fact, very tall, and, as he was straight and slender, he appeared even taller than he really was. He was, however, though young, very easy and graceful in his manners, and highly accomplished. Mary